Adding extended techniques is a great way to spice up your phrasing and add some pizzazz into your musical lines.
In this video, we're going to show you 3 techniques: bending, growling, and vibrato. I love using these techniques, and I often combine them together to create a unique sound.
First, let's talk about bending.
To bend properly, you basically need to unlearn everything you've learned about staying in tune. What you're actually doing when you're bending into a note is playing the pitches in between the notes. I use bending as a vehicle to go from one note to another. Take this phrase, for example. Now, let's bend in between those notes for an added effect. What I'm doing is loosening my bottom lip to make the note flat and then coming back into the correct pitch.
I love using bending when it comes to playing a ballad. It gives a melancholy feeling. You do have to tighten your jaw ever so slightly, but your embouchure should still stay pretty much the same. Don't put too much pressure on your jaw, or you'll start to squeak.
Bending is a very subtle activity, and it gets you closer to the vocal sound. Whenever you're singing, a lot of times you're singing in between the pitches, which is what bending is.
I want you to yawn right now. Let's try it. As you yawn, stop halfway. Do you feel how open your throat is? And do you feel how open your mouth is? Notice how the roof of your mouth is raised? That is what you need to do in order to get a bend going up and a bend going down. Check it out. You'll notice my fingers didn't move and my embouchure pretty much stayed the same. The only thing that was changing is the roof of my mouth is going higher, and my throat is opening up bigger and wider, just like that yawn.
I come from the world of clarinet, where you can slowly move your fingers off the holes to help you bend. You can apply the same technique to saxophone. If you need help bending, try lifting the pad slowly to create that in-between sound. Here's an exercise that's going to help you bend your notes. Slowly lift your right index finger until you have G, like this. In this exercise, I'm not moving my lip at all. This is supposed to just help slowly lifting the pads. Once you incorporate your bottom lip also, you can get an even more effective bend. Try doing this on every note. Try to go all the way up the horn and all the way down the horn. It might be difficult at first, but if you do this every day, I guarantee you're going to get better at it eventually.
I want you to notice how consistent he was as he lifted the pad up. It was really smooth. You want to aim for that smoothness as your main goal. This exercise I'm about to show you now will help you in your flexibility with your bend, in both going down and going up. You're going to go up and down the horn chromatically. I'll show you a few notes right now. First, we'll try it going down. You're going to utilize that yawning technique for this one and not move your fingers. So, on a concert A flat, here we go. Again, I'm integrating that yawning technique when I start the note. At first, you might not be able to bend that much. It might sound like, but as you get stronger and you practice this a little bit every day, you'll be able to bend even further. Once you get that down, you can integrate bending upwards, like this. As you get higher up, it's going to get harder. You can practice this lower on the notes. Once you get that down, you can start to do both low and high and practice for the ultimate flexibility within your mouth and throat. I practice this with a tuner so you can see exactly how far up and how far down you go. Keep stretching it every day.
This is one of those exercises that might not sound great at first. Just keep on trying it. It'll get better over time.
We definitely didn't get this overnight. It took months of practicing. Also, your muscles have to adjust to these exercises. If you're feeling any type of pain, stop, take a break, come back tomorrow.
Vibrato is basically bending over and over and over again, but it's less extreme.
With vibrato, you'll hear that consistent pulsating vibration.
There's many different types of vibrato. In classical music, for example, the vibrato is sort of like this.
And there's other types of vibratos, like a slower one.
One of my favorite types of vibrato is a fade vibrato. Basically, you hit the note with no vibrato, and then you slowly start putting more vibrato in the note until you fade into the distance, like this.
Vibrato has a very stylistic quality to it. Sometimes when I hear a certain fast type of vibrato, it reminds me of an old school jazz style of playing. Or if it's in a neo-soul type of situation and there's a bigger vibrato happening, it feels more stylistic to that. When do you use vibrato?
I often use vibrato if I'm playing a ballad. It's my favorite way to use vibrato. I also use vibrato whenever I'm bending into a note, and then I settle into that note, like this, for example.
Let's go through some tips for vibrato. When you're just beginning, you really want to focus on hearing that different pitch change and that pulsation that's happening. It might help to sing something like do-ee-oo-ee-oo-ee. Really differentiate where that slight pitch is happening. And then as you try it out, you can even accentuate that pitch change. Later it will get more subtle, but at first, just practice really hearing it, like this. It is almost a mini bend. I suggest starting with that mini bend and later smooth it out so it would sound like. There is a little bit of pressure that I'm adding during the vibrato in order to shake the note. If it's coming out and it seems sloppy at first, you're on the right track. Don't worry about the subtleties that will come later. The first thing is to just get the technique happening.
If you want to develop your own style of vibrato, I suggest listening to a bunch of different saxophone players that use vibrato, like Johnny Hodges, for example. Or, in my case, Harry Carney is one of the best baritone sax vibratos I've ever heard. You gotta listen to his version of Body and Soul. But you don't have to just take inspiration from saxophone players. Like I've said before, the saxophone is very similar to the voice. You should try listening to some of your favorite vocalists too. If you want to get a good concept of a very deep vibrato, I suggest listening to some opera. When I add vibrato to a note, I think, wow. Wow, 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 wow. W-O-W. I would suggest getting a metronome, start at 95 BPM, and try to do the wow vibrato in eighth notes, or 16th notes, or quarter notes.
I want to point out to all of you that while Leo is demonstrating, his lip and jaw was moving ever so slightly, which happens naturally when you say the word wow, wow, wow. Something to look out for when you're practicing this as well.
It's a very difficult, very subtle technique. It takes time. Like every advanced technique, you're not gonna get it overnight. Keep on trying. Okay, let's talk about my favorite technique of all times, the growl. I love growling. I feel like it's my battle roar. I feel like a lion whenever I growl. It's a very distinct sound. It reminds me of when Christina Aguilera sings sometimes. She has that.
Just revving up, ready to go. It is exciting.
It's often used in pop and rock solos. If you want to get a great representation of growling, I recommend you start listening to some Clarence Clemens. That dude was a beast.
Incredible sound. It's powerful. And he growls. It almost seems he growls throughout the whole phrase.
He'll growl an entire solo. It's ridiculous. Here's an example of growling.
I hear you're lying, sir.
Rawr.
Rawr. And here's some growling on the alto.
I've noticed in general, you don't choose to growl as much as me, but when you do, it sounds amazing. These are stylistic choices that are yours. Whenever you're improvising, it's your choice to growl whenever you want or whenever you don't want to. Although, sometimes growling will be notated in music. So you should be ready for it. Even if you don't want to use it in your improvisations, at some point you're going to be sight reading a big band chart and it's going to say growl. One really important thing about growling is it's something you can't do for too long until you build up into it. You risk seriously hurting your throat if you do it too much. Before you start growling, I strongly suggest you get a cup of tea right by your side or some water because your throat's gonna hurt. As a beginner, you're not used to using the muscles that you need for growling. So it's important to take it slow and have either water or tea by your side.
When I first started growling, I was a bit afraid I was doing it wrong because my throat was sore. And the good news is over time, after practicing it 5 minutes a day, finally my body adjusted to be able to turn it on whenever, and it doesn't hurt when I do it. It actually feels more like a little massage for me.
That's similar to how I feel about it. Okay, so how do you growl? I think of the same HA sound that I use for the breath attack, but now I picture there being an R between the H and A. So it's like ha, but it's more like you gotta get that R in there. For an example of how to make your throat growl, listen to some Louis Armstrong. The way he sings is very growly. You have to create the same sound in your throat when you're playing saxophone to create a growl. What a wonderful world. It's the same effect.
You can play around with using the syllable voo and trying to get that Louis Armstrong in there. Sometimes students ask me, well, does it matter if I sing the pitch higher or lower? I'd say experiment. Every vocal range is slightly different. There's no one answer. If you can start to get the actual sound, even the onset like that, that's great. That's what you're looking for in the beginning. Just a little bit of the With time, you'll be able to hold it out. If the growl starts to cut in and out, it's cool. That's also what happens in the beginning. Like this. You want to actually audibly hear the voo. As long as you're hearing those vibrations move around, you are on track.
I think HRA, Grace thinks VOO, and they both work somehow. Maybe you can incorporate your own way to growl. There's not one way, but these are great ways to get started.
Do you remember the first time you successfully growled, and how long did it take you?
Yes. I was playing the musical Grease with my high school. I was very excited about it, but in the music, it said growl all over the place. That early 60s tenor sax sound had so much growl in it. So I asked my teacher, who was very versed in making growl sounds. He taught me how to do it. At first, I couldn't do it at all. I kept trying. Luckily, over the course of 3 months, I got it. And by opening night, I could already do it.
Hey, good timing.
It wasn't perfect, and it's definitely not as good as I can do it now. But I was able to make that sound.
I remember the first time it finally popped off. I had been practicing for months. It was cutting in and cutting out, and then it happened, and I was like jumping for joy because it's such an exciting technique. Good news is once I got it, I got it.
For our visual learners out there, picture this. Your saxophone is a guitar. Growling is distortion, and your throat is the distortion pedal. That is how you're gonna growl. Turning on the distortion pedal is going from to Here's an exercise that's gonna help you get started whenever you wanna learn to growl. Play a chromatic scale, start with a straight note, and then do a growling note. I would suggest you start at 95 BPM. Start slow, and then move up. It's gonna sound like this. Say you can't quite get it, keep on trying. And then keep moving up the horn. It's even harder to growl in the low register. I would suggest trying that later on. Here's how it sounds. I was starting on low D, but the lower you go, the more difficult. Now let's try low A. The lower the note, the more air you need, which makes it even more challenging.
After that, you can change up the intervals. You can play that same exercise through the circle of fourths. And you could also turn on your tuner. to make sure you're staying in tune as you do it. This next exercise is going to challenge you.
Do bending and growling.
Bending, vibrato, and growling. One more extended technique we're going to share with you is subtone. Go all the way down to a whisper.
Another extended technique that I created is the Leo P duck embouchure. You open your mouth like a duck.